Hello to all Cinemaster lovers. Hope you enjoy watching. Let's get started. At the beginning of the movie, a voice narrating that before the great flood that covered the earth, many difficult events began to unfold. However, one specific story, which has become a legend among many others over the years. At some point, the world was ruled by creatures from other dimensions, known as the ancient rulers. During that time, Earth went through a period of very dark rule. In a palace on an island called Minos, all the people in the kingdom worshipped idols, especially bulls, which they considered very powerful creatures. As the Dark Empire grew, so did greed and ambition, along with evil and madness, that took control of humanity. Men were dominated by these demonic thoughts, and they sacrificed the princess to the ruling bull. This resulted in the birth of a small creature, which made the Dark Empire even stronger. As the creature grew, so did its hunger. Eventually, the monster was placed in a maze to control it. At a certain point, a new law was enacted in the Minos Empire due to the murder of a prince in the kingdom. This law stipulated that every 3 years, 8 people would be taken from their homes and placed in the monster's maze to be sacrificed. As the 50th sacrifice approaches, Theo, who is seen herding a flock of sheep with his friend Danu. While walking, they spot someone in the distance wearing a cloak. Danu says that his father told him that this man is a bad omen, and that whenever someone sees him, something terrible happens afterward. When Theo returns to the tent, he tells his father about what he saw in the forest with Danu, and he also shares how much he misses his beloved, who was taken to be sacrificed to the monster. He asks his father how many more people will have to die to satisfy this monster and avenge the prince who died so long ago. His father tries to comfort him, but Theo is deeply frustrated. At this point, Danu goes to talk to his beloved, Morna, and confesses to her that he's afraid of losing her when the soldiers come. Meanwhile, some men from the village gather, including Theo's father, and they agree that Theo's father should become the leader of their area. They debate whether to send someone to kill the monster or fight to protect their children from being taken as sacrifices. They believe that if they do this, people will no longer live in fear. One of the men asks why Theo isn't chosen as one of the 8 to be sacrificed, and the leader explains that he can't do that because Theo is his son and will inherit the leadership after him. One day, Theo sees wolves approaching his sheep from a distance and runs to save them, but unfortunately, he is too late, and by the time he arrives, one of the sheep has been killed. At that moment, Theo spots one of the wolves still nearby, but it runs away. Theo chases after it, and while running, he comes across a tree with a strange symbol carved into it. Looking around, he finds the entrance to the cave where the mysterious cloaked figure he had seen before lives. Theo goes into the cave and discovers that the figure in the cloak is actually an old woman, and the wolf is sitting next to her. Theo talks to her about the symbol on the tree, telling her that he recognizes it because he has the other half of the symbol, which he shows her on a broken medallion around his neck. He explains that the other half of the medallion belongs to the girl he loves, who was taken to be sacrificed to the monster. The old woman tells him that yes, they took the girl, but they haven't sacrificed her yet. She reveals that the girl is in the maze beneath the palace. Theo doesn't believe the old woman at first, but she tells him that to save his beloved, he must kill the monster, known as the Minotaur. That night, Theo stays up, thinking about his beloved, who was taken from him. The next morning, Theo's father wakes him up and tells him to take the sheep and leave, as the soldiers are coming soon. Theo tells his father that he spoke with the old woman in the cave, and that she told him the girl he loves is still alive. He also says that if he wants to see her again, he has to kill the Minotaur. But his father gets angry and tells him that the old woman is just talking nonsense. He reminds Theo that no one has ever been able to kill the Minotaur to this day. Later that day, they see the Empire's ships approaching from afar. That night, the soldiers arrive in the village and start taking the young people. Theo, following his father's instructions, hiding in the mountains, but he can't stop thinking about what the old woman said. Meanwhile, the soldiers are raiding the tents and taking any young people they find. Theo continues to sit there, lost in thought, remembering the girl they took from him. Suddenly, Theo makes a decision. He gets up and runs to the village. As the soldiers are leaving with the 8 young people they need, Theo arrives. Without anyone noticing, he switches places with one of the girls being taken. At that moment, Theo's father watches, heartbroken over the young people being taken, not knowing that his son is among them. The next morning, Danu notices someone wrapped in a blanket, and when he goes to check on them, he finds that it's his friend Theo. After a while, Theo starts talking to one of the other youths named Tyro, with whom he doesn't get along. Theo tells him that he's going to kill the monster, but Tyro doesn't believe anyone could kill the Minotaur, even though they both secretly wish for the same thing. Each of the young people has their own beliefs about the monster. One of the girls is convinced that they should be proud of what they're doing. When they finally arrive at the Dark Empire, they are taken before Emperor Deucalion. The soldiers are ordered to begin the sacrifice immediately, starting with 2 of the girls. In front of the Emperor's throne, there is a deep pit, covered with thick iron bars, through which the youths are meant to be thrown. But before Deucalion can throw the girls in, one of the soldiers comments that the girls might not please the Minotaur. Deucalion angrily tells him to be quiet and calls for the kingdom's princess. He takes an animal skull and makes her inhale the smoke rising from it. The princess, seemingly in a trance, approaches the two girls and pushes them toward the pit without hesitation. As the iron bars begin to open, Deucalion taunts the monster, which doesn't appear at first. But soon, the shadow of its horns is visible, followed by a loud roar that shakes the entire place. At this moment, Theo and Tyro decide to take advantage of the distraction and attack the soldiers. Unfortunately, they fail, and the soldiers quickly subdue them. The princess orders the soldiers to remove the two girls from the pit, while Deucalion commands his men to prepare the pit to throw all 8 youths at once. Then, he angrily yells at the princess for speaking out. The youths locked up, waiting for the soldiers to come and take them away. Then, Princess Rafaela, speaking in a hushed tone with one of her servants, instructing her to bring Theo to her. The old witch had warned the princess that Theo would come. When Rafaela locks herself in her room, Theo sneaks in to confront her. During their encounter, Rafaela tells him that she needs his help to escape from this place. However, unbeknownst to them, Deucalion is listening and watching. Rafaela reveals to Theo that the girl who was captured and not yet sacrificed is his beloved. She offers to help him save her, but in return, he must help her. At that moment, Deucalion arrives with his men. He orders them to imprison Theo. Though Theo tries to fight back, he is overpowered and captured. Deucalion then threatens Rafaela and commands his men to throw Theo into the monster's pit. Afterward, the soldiers go to retrieve the rest of the youths. One by one, they are thrown into the maze, entering from different scattered entrances throughout the palace. Theo, now in the pit, hears the terrifying screams of his friends echoing through the maze. He's unsure of what to do, but then he hears heavy breathing and the dreadful roar of the Minotaur approaching its first victim. The first to fall prey to the beast is the girl who had proudly declared that what they were doing was their duty. Her screams spread throughout the maze as the Minotaur devours her. As Theo wanders through the maze, he smells a strange odor coming from between the rocks. He uses an animal skull to filter the air, but after inhaling some of the gas, he starts to hallucinate. He thinks he sees his beloved in front of him. However, his trance is interrupted by the sound of stones shifting from the end of the tunnel. When he goes there, he finds Morna, the girl he loves, but she is unable to speak. Instead, she uses a strange sound to guide others toward her, just as she did with Theo. When Morna tries to communicate with him using sign language, Theo doesn't understand her. Suddenly, they both hear a scream in the distance. Without hesitation, they run towards the sound, hoping to save their friend. On the other side, Fina, who is terrified, calling out for anyone to help her. As she moves the rocks in front of her to escape, she discovers a decayed corpse and leaves it behind. Suddenly, Danu shows up, but Vina screams even louder out of shock. At that moment, Theo and Morna arrive, and the 4 of them begin to figure out what to do next. Vena tells them she wants to get out of the maze as soon as possible, but the others insist they need to search for the rest of their group, even though they're unsure if they're still alive. Meanwhile, Rafaela is taken to Deucalion's room for him to write his decree, but as soon as she notices one of the pits open, she runs and stands over it, declaring that she is ready to sacrifice herself to the beast rather than marry Deucalion. On the other side, Theo and his friends arrive at the place where the girl was killed, and they see blood everywhere along with remnants of her clothing. They also notice the tracks of the massive beast. As they try to guess the creature's size, Tero suddenly puts his hand over Danu's mouth and tells the others to stay quiet because the beast is approaching. He declares that he will kill the monster himself, but needs someone to act as bait. Theo decides to be that bait, while the others hide, armed with whatever weapons they found around them. After a while, they sense something coming near, and everyone jumps to attack, only to find out it's Rafaela, who says she's come to help them. She reveals that she knows the way out, and that her assistant is waiting for them. However, Vina is not convinced and decides to leave, but Theo urges her to stay. She starts arguing with everyone, claiming she doesn't care about any of them, and feels ashamed to have been born in that village, believing she is the reason for everything happening to them. While she is ranting, the beast suddenly appears from behind her and kills her with one of its horns. Everyone panics and runs away. After they get some distance, they find their friend Didi, who is unconscious, but Rafaela helps her regain consciousness. They continue towards the exit that Rafaela mentioned. When they finally reach the door, they call for her assistant to open it, but there's no response. They start to panic and attempt to break down the door, especially when they hear the beast getting closer. Unfortunately, they don't manage to escape in time, and they see the massive monster charging toward them. It strikes one of the youths with a loud crash before killing its new victim with its horns, swinging them left and right. Theo, Danu, and Morna run in the same direction, while Rafaela gets trapped and cannot escape with them. Didi and Tyro find a spot further away in the maze and come across some water, which they drink to quench their thirst. On the other side, Theo and the others run aimlessly until they encounter a strange man who tells them he has been living there for a long time, surviving on rats and insects. He advises them to follow him, as he will take them to a safe place. This man's name is Turog. He then leads them to a small opening between the rocks and shows them a little map he has created of the area, claiming he has been there for a long time. Despite his apparent madness and nonsensical ramblings, he shares important information, like that the creature sleeps, which gives them an opportunity to escape. Theo focuses intently on what he is saying. Rafaela is still alive and has escaped from the monster, making her way through the maze. Meanwhile, Deucalion is shouting at the creature, standing by one of the openings and claiming he will go down to retrieve Rafaela, the reckless son of Deucalion entering through a door to the maze. At this moment, Theo becomes convinced that Vina is still alive and asks Turog about her whereabouts, believing that since Turog has lived there for a long time, he must know. However, their voices draw the attention of the beast, which begins to push the rocks to collapse the area around them. At that moment, Deucalion hears the creature approaching and quickly exits through the door, abandoning the soldier who accompanied him. The soldier is swallowed by the beast as soon as it spots him. On the other side, Theo pressures Turog to reveal the location of his girlfriend. When he sees the necklace with the pendant he gave her, he becomes more convinced that she is still alive. He takes the map that Turog made and forces him to point out where she is. After Turog indicates a specific place, Theo decides to head there. Meanwhile, Didi and Tyro continue wandering aimlessly. As they move, they start to develop feelings for each other, and Tyro promises that he will help her escape from this place. They approach one of the entrances to the palace, and Tyro climbs up to the iron bars, telling Didi to follow him and hold his hand. However, as she climbs up the wall, the monster arrives and stands underneath them. Despite Tyro's warning not to look down, Didi glances down and, upon seeing the monster, panics. This catches the monster's attention, and unfortunately, she can't control her nerves, causing her to fall onto the monster's horns. At that moment, as Theo walks through the maze, he begins to hear his girlfriend's voice. Suddenly, she appears in front of him, and he is overjoyed. He runs towards her and embraces her, only to realize that he is hugging her skeleton. This realization hits him hard, and he understands that he needs to help his friends who are in need. He then starts searching for Danu and the rest of his friends. In that same moment, Danu asks Morna to hide in Turog's hideout while he confronts Theo. When he sees a shadow calling out to him, he realizes something is wrong. He approaches for a clearer look and sees that it's the monster coming to kill him. Understanding he won't be able to escape, he shouts to Theo to take care of Morna. Meanwhile, Theo hears his friend's voice coming from all directions, feeling confused about where to go. Suddenly, he hears screams, realizing the monster is attacking Danu. This infuriates him, and in a moment of frustration, he throws the metal pendant against the wall. This creates sparks, igniting a fire. This sight gives Theo hope that they might escape this place alive. Afterward, Rafaela approaches him and reveals the truth about the Minotaur and the reason behind the sacrifices. She explains that the one who killed the prince was the Minotaur, and to cover up this scandal, they spread the rumor that a man from Theo's village was to blame. This was done to incite the villagers to continue making sacrifices for the events that unfolded. Rafaela encourages Theo to fight the monster and defeat it, and she also takes him to the source of the gas to help him recover for what's to come. However, while they are there, the monster appears and becomes a significant threat. At that moment, Tyro arrives, visibly upset over losing Didi. He tells Theo to run and confronts the monster himself, but the monster charges at him with its horns. Despite the danger, Tyro continues to fight. Meanwhile, Theo leaves Rafaela in a safe spot, instructing her to hide underwater when the monster appears. He then returns to battle the monster. When Theo arrives, he realizes he can't save Tyro, who has already fallen. Filled with rage, he shouts at the monster to draw its attention, and it indeed comes after him. At the last moment, Theo leaps out of the way, causing the monster to crash into the wall, creating more space for gas to escape. The monster, disoriented from the gas, has a part of its horn broken off. Theo searches for the pendant he has to ignite a fire, only to find it stuck in the monster's horn. As the creature is still dazed, Theo runs in another direction, jumps on the monster and retrieves the pendant. However, the monster, regaining its composure, charges at Theo again. This time, Theo changes his path and heads toward Rafaela, hoping to escape the flames. As he moves, he strikes the pendant against the wall until sparks finally ignite. The fire rapidly fills the area, and Theo reaches Rafaela just in time. The monster ignites in flames and dies, resulting in a powerful explosion that propels them upward to the castle. The explosion is so intense that it reaches Deucalion and his servants, killing them due to the debris from the falling bull statue. After the chaos, Theo and Raphaela emerge from the water, still frightened by the monster. Suddenly, they hear footsteps behind them, realizing that the Minotaur is still alive but severely injured. As soon as it spots Theo, it lunges at him. At that moment, Theo spots the broken horn lying nearby. He picks it up and immediately thrusts it into the monster's mouth. The beast retaliates fiercely, slamming him against the wall, but this impact drives the horn deep into its body, ultimately killing it. Afterward, Theo and Raphaela search for any exit from the maze. On their way, Theo finds Morna and Turog hiding, so he brings them along. On their way, the entire place starts to collapse around them. The group continues onward until they finally spot an exit, illuminated by sunlight. They find themselves in the main hall, where Deucalion is severely injured but still alive. Raphaela rushes to Deucalion, killing him to ensure a better life and future for the people. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification button to get more new videos. See ya!